it's the end of the line. Right. All right. I don't know if it's really that deep, but a little over dramaticness never hurt anybody. It really is a sad day. I think it is the end of DSLRs. I've talked about this before, and there's no script for this, so I'm just going off the dome. The idea that mirrorless is at the tail end of the technology. Nobody's making DSLRs at a prominent rate. There's no new glass that's coming in. Nikon, Canon, they've all shifted away to RF lenses, and whatever the equivalent is on Nikon's side is just a sad fact now. It's an old man's mentality, right? To not want to give up what you know. And I've stuck to shooting with a DSLR, using a DSLR, and one of my best videos is the reason that the Canon 5D Mark II, this camera right here, is the best camera of 2021, or was it 2020? Whichever, they all blend in anyways. I genuinely stuck with this for so long. I even shot with my phone and DJI Pocket after it got to a level of frustration where, you're just so used to certain things being adept. Like they're baked in, and you expect it from every company now. And the biggest one for me was autofocus. I kid you not, how much time I spent trying to nail the focus, especially as a solo YouTuber. It's probably the most important factor, right? Your stuff has to be in focus or else people think it's unprofessional. And I wasted so much time. I used every trick that I could. We put the broom and then you focus on the broom and then you place some sort of object there. But that took quite a bit of time. And the more that I looked around, mirrorless just seemed to have that baked in, and it was important to have that. The other reason I didn't want to give it up is because I just knew the camera all the way around, right? That's difficult to give up. It just, in general, I know what goes on in this camera, like the back of my hand, because I do look at the back of my hand quite often when I take photos, but also it just what I learned, right? Like I still know where all the buttons are, where the menu's at. Comfort. Also, I really like the way that it's built, but once I got my hands on a mirrorless camera, which hopefully I'll review at some point, you just see the difference. And the camera that I got just fixed the problem where the grip isn't as tough as I'd like it to be, Dodge, Ram, Ford, tough. But that issue has been fixed. Next on the list of reasons why I switched over is the video. I've been shooting with the Mark II for a bit now. I really like the video that comes out of this. I'd say that the way that it's processed on the Mark II looks more quote-unquote cinematic than on the Mark III. Like the Mark III looks more digital, and the more that you go down the line, it looks really digital, like over sharpened, to where I had to bring down the sharpness just a little bit too much. But that's just my personal preference. That's what I'm going to miss about this camera, and I'm going to try to replicate it on the new camera that I have. It just seems kind of counterintuitive, right? But the features that this camera, take a shot every time I say this camera, but it's a holiday, so be careful. It just slowed down the process too much. And video's what I'm trying to do now. Like video's more entertaining. There's so many more moving parts. There's more to learn. And the transition just seems natural, right? You guys like this aerial that I put together? I've been studying how to do this for quite a while now. I'm just gonna put the Mark II down right here. This hesitation of putting together add-ons and buying something else to kind of bring it up to date. And it gradually started to own up where like 1/4 of the cost would have been covered if I had just been less hesitant to, keep the old alive. And it makes sense, right? It's important to know why a mirrorless system was developed, how it came to be from its predecessor. It's a very successful predecessor, and I still know people that are shooting with a DSLR because they don't want the mirrorless. But now that I have the mirrorless system, it's like, where was I? Where have I been for the past 4 years? I kid you not. There's been so many times where I don't know if I'm in focus. And the Canon Mark II did have some sort of, face detection, but it was in like autofocus when I'm in video, right? That didn't develop until like the Mark IV, which is crazy to me. Like, wow, it took us like 10 years to get this going, and I had it on my cell phone. Canon is making some serious dinero off of this camera just because of its flippy screen. And the eye autofocus is so crazy. Like, it's so well done. Just look at the way that I'm moving, and it's just keeping me in focus. This is a feature that I've been wanting for so long. Like, when I first got a DSLR, I'm like, why doesn't it just automatically track my eye, right? Like, software integration into a camera wasn't at this level. So we're nearing to that future. My next expectation is they're going to use some sort of laser to see where your pupil is at. And then once you point your pupil out to what you want to lock on, it'll focus. And then all you have to do is move around the aperture. Sounds like science fiction right now, but I'm hopeful that that's going to happen within like 5 to 7 years, maybe, once we get, once people aren't afraid to have a laser shot in their eye every other day. Moving on to another annoyance. This is just a ramble about why their DSLRs are dead. It's going to be the ramble of dead DSLRs when I switched over. The next, I'd say, slowdown. I'm going to call these like road bumps. These are all road bumps. For the DSLR system, the Mark II, is there was no way for me to monitor my audio. It wasn't so much of a huge deal as I went along, right? Like, I didn't really care too much about it because I have these two lines, if you own a Canon camera, where it lets you know if you're peaking or not. It worked really well. Like, if you know what you're doing, it'll work really well. But I wanted to hear it play back on my camera, but I couldn't insert the mics, right? So I couldn't listen and hear it back. And that was unfortunate. So more time had to be wasted transferring it over to a laptop. And it just gradually added up. It's like, how much time have I wasted, finding an SD card? Now, that's not on the camera's fault. That's on the computer manufacturer's fault. But I've wasted a lot of time doing that. Like, having to find a card reader, the cable, put it together, make sure it's transferred, make sure it all looks good. And that's how I would also check focus, because the screen on this, it's good. Like, it's really, really good, but not good enough. Like, when I'm comparing it, I'm comparing a lot to my cell phone. The cell phone has truly spoiled us, giving us constant software updates, a little nugget of autofocus here, a little bit of focus monitoring there, great screens. It's really like a baseline of what should come to a high professional DSLR. I will say one of the hesitations with the camera that I got is there's just so much. Like, oh man, this is so simple. This, you don't realize how quote unquote simple, there's some technicality of engineering in this, which makes it like a miracle to capture video and photo. Then I move over to this, and oh my god, like, I wish there was some way to like tweak the autofocus in video so it's a lot better, or I could move around certain settings so it does this better in some ways, or it does this in a better way. One thing that's really neat is I can kind of adjust the way that the lens focuses, so it's not so like it's not a fast jitter movement. It can slow down, and then it'll look a little bit smoother, right? And I wish that I could do that. There's a lot of stuff in here that I really, really wanted, but now it's like a mountain of features, or it's like 5 years, maybe 6 years of features being crammed down my throat. And it's like, oh my god, where do I even start? It's a miracle that this thing is even focusing, because I thought I couldn't figure it out, but it comes, pre-baked in, and you watch a few videos, and there's some like weird things that are going on with the camera. There's an abundance of features that I need to learn again. It really does feel like I'm learning photography and filmmaking for the very first time, which I'm learning from Casey Neistat within the next month, if you guys didn't know. So subscribe for that. Yeah, just having so much. Like, having, be careful what you wish for, because they'll eventually make it. And you'll be like, what did I get myself into? There's no dual card slots. The lack of dual card slots was, I had a Mark III, and then I sold that. because student loans are a thing. And then I jumped back down to the Mark II, and I didn't really care too much about dual card slots for a while. It's like, oh, what are the odds of that getting corrupt? But after I went to my hard drive sale, I'm all like, everything needs to be backed up twice. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, right? Like, it always has to be backed up twice, especially with like clientele work, right? Yeah, so it was important for me after that hard drive fail. It's like, oh my god, and this is just, like my YouTube videos, right? They're not the Snyder cut or anything, but they are very like important, right? Like, they're important to me. After that, I am like, okay, my camera has to have dual card slots, because let's say I'm shooting and one of them fails, right? The camera that I got does have 2 cards, which is great. So it'll be a lot easier to mimic. But it was missing that. I think if you're a semi-pro, you don't need it. If you're just shooting YouTube videos, I don't think you need it as much. But if you plan on, future-proofing yourself, then I think it's much better to go with 2. Touchscreens on a camera. I knew I wanted it, right? Like, everything should be touchscreen at this point. It just seems a lot more effective. And when I got it on this new camera, I was like, oh my god, this thing is gonna get smudges. Someone's gonna definitely scratch it by accident. There's gonna be like glue or something when you're on set, right? I knew that I wanted it, but now I feel like it's an overabundance. Like, one of my least favorite features that took me quite a bit to figure out on the camera is like, how do you turn off click to release? I think the Canon menu systems are better than Sony's, but there's certain, like for white balance, right? I cannot just automatically set the white balance from the direct menu. It's still like the Mark II, where I had to dig in, take a shot, then go back into the menu, choose the photo, and shoot it. I know that with firmware 1.5, they fixed that, but it's only in photo, where in RAW you're able to, move around the white balance. So it just seems kind of strange. Like, Canon does that quite often, where it's like, why are you doing this? Like, yeah, it's like when they were butchering all their cameras with the 1DX, the 5D Mark IV, it got 4K, but it's like 1.5 crop factor. It's like, stop, just give me the freaking camera with no crop. And there's like overheating issues. There's some weird things that Canon still does in the menu that could be fixed. Now, some hesitations about moving to a mirrorless system. I'll start off with the most important one, which is file sizes. I find it kind of interesting that the cost of memory is so cheap, but now storing it costs a whole lot more. So for example, if you're shooting 8K on a camera, it's not just like 20 gigabytes, right? It's like thousands of gigabytes of memory now. If you're running a professional studio or some sort of, film production, you're not just going to throw it onto your hard drive. You're going to throw it onto like Google Drive or Dropbox or one of these other services, and it gradually gets increased the more that you store these. And I've had a hard drive fail and no backup. So it's very tempting to go that route, but it just seems kind of pricey now for cloud storage solutions as to a few years ago, when it just seemed like a much better deal, right? The file sizes are so much bigger, and this leads to the next, concern. You're gonna need a better computer. I'm still shooting, 4K here and there, 1080 for sure. But 4K, I still see my computer struggling. That might have to do with the codec, the bit rate, and my computer's super old too. Having to upgrade your computer is an unfortunate fact that you're gonna have to deal with certain cameras, right? And that's why I recommend the Mark II still, because any computer after like 2018 is gonna breeze through all the footage like nothing. You're gonna need a better computer for Lightroom and also your video editing software of choice. The battery life, I understand why batteries on a mirrorless drain the system so much more. I mean, when I look through the viewfinder, it automatically recognizes my eye that it's there. From what I've seen it so far, from my first impressions, like if I pretend this is the viewfinder, and this is just some like random object, if the object gets too close, the laser thinks it's my eye, and then it like flickers a little bit, and that's kind of an annoying thing. I'm pretty sure it can be fixed somewhere in the settings, but I understand why. The battery is maybe, I'd say 25% less better than the DSLRs. It just has so much information to process, right? This next issue is overheating. This camera never overheated on me once. I've never had a camera overheat on me, like professional level camera be like, hey, it's too hot. Like there's too much going on. My phone has overheated in the past. It's weird to know that a camera has to go through that. It just feels like there's a lot more real estate to play with, so there should be more air ventilation coming into the product, but it doesn't do that. So overheating. I will try to edit 8K on my very old laptop to see how it struggles. I've seen a lot of forums, a lot of videos, and it's an issue. Even as of Christmas 2021, it doesn't seem to have been fixed. And I don't know if that'll be a fixable issue. Is there going to be a 0.5 camera to this? And I don't think I'll ever shoot at a rate that forces my camera to overheat. If you know the rules, you can kind of work around them. So that was basically just a concern that I accepted from the start. Next, when you buy a new body, you always think about what lenses should I get? And I thought about it. I'm currently shooting with a Sigma at the moment. It does hunt for focus really well. Sometimes it can be a bit loud. I don't know if that has to do with the settings or the lens or the mount. I'm bummed out about the mount. Like the mount costs money. I understand why, because later down the line, economies of scale will make lenses a lot cheaper. But at the moment, Canon isn't doing a good job in letting third-party manufacturers work with this new mount, which is weird because they went from butchering their systems, like the 6D Mark II having like a weird 100 grain ISO situation, right? Like they butcher them. I feel it less with this camera, the mirrorless systems, but now I feel like they're not playing ball at the beginning. And that's really frustrating because I want to buy different gear to test it out. I don't know, it just seems kind of strange that they don't want to do that when Sigma has done a phenomenal job providing lenses to others, which just keeps me in your system as opposed to jumping ship because all the other manufacturers are playing well except for you. But I'm very impressed with the adapter. It does work on the Sigma lens, the 35, and I think this is like one of the older versions too, and it works very well. The Sigma does hunt for focus quite often, not so much in the center right here, but more in the corners. And I think corners have always been a problem with lenses, right? They're just normal. They're less sharp around the corners, but I'm very impressed on that end. RF lenses are, I just dream about them. Like they're smaller, they're faster, they're sharper, they give you more features, they give you an ability to focus pull and make the ring around the edge just whatever you want it, and it's programmable. I really want the 24-70. It's just so well made. It's 2.8. I think it's 2 now. I think I'm just mixing stuff up, but oh man, I really want one of those, and hopefully within this next year I get my hands on one of them. But yeah, the biggest bummer is third-party manufacturers are not allowed to play ball. Lastly, this has to do more with Canon and not the mirrorless system, because no other camera company does this. C-Log was like, okay, are they gonna pull a good butchering before they hand this out to the world and make us pay for C-Log? C-Log, when you got the Mark IV a few years ago, you had to send it over to someone, and that could take a few days or a few weeks depending on when they had availability. But I'm happy they didn't do that with this system. It just feels more complete, right? I'm just very happy that they didn't do that, but it's also, it's understandable that the price hike is happening. That wraps it up for me. This video went on for a long time. There's absolutely no structure to it because I'm just happy to have a system that when I move like this, it just keeps me in track so well. It's like magic. Keep that laser idea in mind, and I'll take 5% of the cut, Canon, or whatever camera company does it. But yeah, I still recommend the Mark II. Everything that I said about the 5D Mark II being the most important camera 2021, it still applies to 2022. It's probably going to go down in price even more, and it's just a no-brainer if you're getting started and you want to figure it out. The colors, man, the colors will just blow you away when you're grading them. For me, I know it sounds over dramatic, but it really is a sad day. I kept with this for so long. I tried to keep this alive for so long, but time did not permit. It's just like your first car, man. You think about your first car, your first time driving solo, the freedom of the road, what it brought to you, where it took you. And it's kind of the same for this, right? Like, sure, it's new, it's supposed to be better, it's supposed to be faster and cooler. This is old school cool now. And, you know, I'm happy I stuck with it for so long, but time is the most valuable resource we have, and the constant slowdown, all the workarounds that I did, every single video, man. Like, well, I'll just be honest. I've been, like, the past maybe like 3 videos have been shot on the DJI Osmos. The Pocket, I'll be reviewing that for sure. But ever since, like, before that, this was it. Like, I did the workarounds. I wasted the time. I put everything together. Like, it was driving me bonkers. And I just hear this click, and it's so memorable. And it's like, you don't want to give it up because you know it so well. You know it like the back of your hand, right? Like, I know it like the back of my hand. And I did stare at the back of my hand a lot when I was taking photos. But yeah, it's difficult to give up because I know it so well. But it's the end of an era, and part of the journey is the end. I don't even know what the video will be titled, but hopefully this lets you know why I switched over. And I just feel so, like, ready to make more new stuff. I just think it's important to have a camera that also inspires you too, right? And I think that's why we buy so many, because hey, this might make me work a little bit different. But I'm really excited, man. Like, 2022, hopefully I can put out more quality content that's in focus. But yeah, I'm excited about the camera, all the new stuff that I've been working on, and hopefully you're along for the journey. Thank you to all 352 of you that are here for this ride. Yeah, let's keep on making stuff. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. See, now I know where to point because I have the flippy screen. And upvote me on the Foundation app. I've been thinking about selling my first NFT, minting it. So take a look at that. At the end of the day, I thank you so much for your time, your attention. My name is Azri Hongos, and I'll catch you in the next one.